Have you ever wondered if ChatGPT can help you manage your money? I did, so today is going to be an experiment because we're gonna do a live demonstration of using ChatGPT as financial advisor or money coach, if you will. So I saw this video from Andre Geek where he asked ChatGPT to make him as much money as possible in the shortest amount of time. Now he tried it with investments and that didn't go so well. I'll link the video down below. But it got me thinking, can ChatGPT help you bring your finances in order? So I'm going to pretend like I don't know anything about money and then I'm going to comment the answers that I get from ChatGPT. So this is going to be an experiment for me too. And I think it's going to be a bit tricky for two reasons. The first one is, as a creator, I pretty much use ChatGPT on a daily basis. So I already learned how to communicate with her, him, it, and the output you get will probably be influenced by what you get out of it. And the second thing is that I have been learning about money and investing for more than a decade. So I pretty much already know a lot. And the type of questions I would ask may be different from the ones a beginner would ask because, my brain is already wired for asking the right questions. But I'm going to try to reduce those two biases. For the first one, so me being experienced with ChatGPT, I have used a meta technique and I will explain in a second what that means. And I am also going to share with you what I learned about ChatGPT, so about using AI. And this then can be, a second thing that you get out of this video is tips on how to interact with AI. And as for the second one, so me being already experienced with money management, I'm going to create a persona for this experiment and I will try to get in the head of this person as much as I can. I'm Sophia. On this channel I talk about how to build wealth without living frugal. And if after this little experiment you decide that you rather want to listen to a real person when it comes to money instead of a machine, then you are invited to subscribe. I am not going to use my ChatGPT account because it has already learned, from everything that I asked. So I'm going to use the version where no login is needed. Just so you know, I haven't ran any of those questions beforehand. So this is live for me too. Okay, live now that I'm recording, not really live for you. Unless you're interested in me doing this live as well, then let me know in the comments. There's only one thing I did before, but first let me tell you about the persona. So I'm going to use someone named Alex, because Alex is a name that goes for men and women alike. So let's say Alex has a full-time job, American, and earning the average American income after tax, which at the moment is about $4,800 per month. And let's say Alex is in the 4th year of the job. All right, I'll quickly write this text. So I just read 2 sentences about this persona, Alex, and I did that because I want ChatGPT to have some context about myself. And I'm going to start with an open question, which will be, I feel behind financially. Where do I even start with my money? Now, one note on that question. That is the only thing that I ran beforehand. And that also brings us back to what I mean with the meta technique. So what I mean by meta technique is that you basically don't ask a question to get the answer, but you ask a question to get the right question. And what I had asked ChatGPT is, what is the common beginner question when it comes to money? I'll show you a screenshot right here. And the answer to that question, the first one that came up was, where do I even start with my money? And that is what I'm using here. Now let the game begin. All right, now it writes. And I love how ChatGPT always encourages. That's great that you're thinking about taking control of your finances. All right, and now let's look at the advice. Number 1, understand your financial situation. Monthly income, that's what we already provided. Expenses, write down everything you spend money on monthly. Rent, mortgage, utilities, food, insurance, transportation, entertainment, etc. This helps identify where you're spending. And that's already great advice because in the beginning you need clarity. And when I started out, there actually wasn't something called ChatGPT. It took me quite some time to figure out that this is actually the very first step, to track your expenses. So love that it brought that up so quickly. Then debt. Do you have any outstanding debt? And it is posed at a question, and that is brilliant because that's the same thing that I would do too. If someone would ask me, hey, where do I start with my money? Then I would ask, okay, what's your income? What's your job? Then have you tracked your expenses? And also, are you in debt? So that's very good. And it also starts, how much have you saved up? And do you have any retirement accounts like 401k, IRAs, or brokerage accounts? Brilliant. So he, she, it is trying to, to figure out more about me. Then number 2, build an emergency fund is essential for peace of mind. Love that. Why is she calling it peace of mind? I always say she, I don't know why. It's just, I'm wondering because I use the phrase financial peace of mind a lot. And now I'm thinking if it maybe, like cross-remembered through my browser history or my login data. Although, okay, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just how she phrases it. But yes, continues with the first financial goal, pretty much. Aim to save about 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a savings account that is easily accessible. This is personal finance 101, really. And I love that Alicia also suggests to start small, even if it's just $100 to $200 a month, because that's already progress. Love that. Then already the next goal, tackle debt, if applicable. Yes, assuming, so if you have high interest debt, such as credit card debt, prioritize paying it off first as it grows quickly. That is pretty much true. And also love that he, she, it included, the 2 main methods of getting rid of debt fast. Now, the first thing I notice here is the order, because, number 2 is build an emergency fund, and that is essential and that is important. And it also says, 3 to 6 months. And then after that comes tackling debt. Now, I'm not sure if he, she, it would actually recommend it in that order. I think that is where I would probably look for a way to take care of both. Because the way I see it, we need liquidity. So we need to be able to pay for unexpected expenses. And at the same time, I would not wait 1 more second to get rid out of debt, especially if it's high interest rate debt. So if someone would come to me, especially with an income of $4,800, I would probably say, okay, let's find a way how you can take care of those 2 goals from the start. And then next comes maximize retirement contributions. You're in year 4 of your job. Are you contributing? Again, the question. You should aim to contribute at least enough to get the full match. Yes, I totally agree. Okay, if I would be in a one-on-one situation, I would probably also ask, okay, what's your individual situation? Because the employer match or also the 401k, these types of retirement or these tax advantage retirement accounts, they usually come with certain conditions and you really have to check the conditions beforehand. But on the other hand, we told her we are employed, we have a full-time job and we're in our 4th year. So this is safe to assume that this could apply to us, to Alex. And Roth IRA, if you're eligible, this is a great tool for tax-free growth and it might be a good option to consider once you've handled emergency savings and debt. Love that. Very good. Okay, number 5, set short-term and long-term goals. It can help to be specific about what you want to achieve. Short-term goals, 1 to 3 years, building an emergency fund, paying off credit card debt, saving for a vacation. Love that. Long-term goals, 3+ years. Okay, this is a tiny detail, but I would probably say 3 to 5 or 3 to 8 years is midterm goals, and after that comes long-term goals. But still important to ask this question, buying a house, retirement, or other big-ticket items. The yard. Number 6, look for opportunities to increase income or cut costs. Can you ask for a raise at work or look for new job opportunities with a higher salary? Can you cut back on certain discretionary spending or negotiate some of your bills? Consider side hustles, freelancing, or selling things you no longer need. All right, this is good. And this is also something that probably every financial advisor or money coach or however you want to call them would bring up. Again, here it's a little bit the order, but we have how much? 7 steps. So this is already the broader picture of how to do it or of what to do, in general. So it's definitely not wrong to ask, okay, is there a way you can earn more? Also, is there a way to cut back? And the consider side hustles, freelancing and stuff seems a bit generic to me. But also, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I didn't even know that side hustles were a thing. So if this is the first time you would hear about this as well, then this would be a good thing. And then number 7, track and review. Use a budgeting app like Mint, YNAB, or Personal Capital to track your income and expenses. Review your spending monthly and look for patterns that you can adjust. Interesting that it mentions Mint, because I think Mint doesn't exist like that anymore. And love also that it gives some additional resources. Books like The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey and The Millionaire Next Door offer actionable financial strategies. The Total Money Makeover would be probably my number one tip when you are in debt, like really, really struggling with debt. And The Millionaire Next Door also gives very, very valuable insights in how millionaires actually live. It was a study done, I think, in the 90s. And you can pick one or two like tips or strategies from that book. Although I would not say that this is a step-by-step how to manage your money kind of book. But it doesn't matter, it's still a good resource. And online tools. Use online calculators to see how much you should be saving for retirement or other goals. Okay, now's the question. What do I ask next? Okay, let's say I wrote, where do I even start with my money? Now, what I could do, especially when I feel overwhelmed by those, 7 suggestions, is to just start with number 1 and confirm. Okay, so would you recommend to track my expenses as the very next step, because it comes first in your point number 1, question mark. All right. And this at the same time would be my tip for using AI. So the first one is give it some background information. We already did that by, explaining our persona Alex and the situation he or she is in. Then number 2, start with an open question, because then you get a broader answer or a broader picture. And then number 3 is you dive deeper into the specific fields that you are interested in by asking the next question for that field. And I think this is really where the power of AI comes in. Is when you start on one level, but then you get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. All right, let's look at this. Yes, exactly. Tracking your expenses should be your first next step. It's like taking a full financial inventory to understand exactly where your money is going. Love that. This will give you clarity on areas where you can potentially cut back or reallocate funds toward more important goals, like saving or paying off debt. Here's how you can start. Okay. Before I continue with this one, if I would work 101, by the way, I don't do work 101. I'm just using that as a comment, all right? But if Alex would ask me, okay, where do I even start with my money? I think I would not start with expenses. I would even do one step before that. And that is to ask, what's your actual goal? So what do you want to achieve by managing your money? Because then tracking the expenses becomes one step or one tool to move towards a goal Alex already said before that. Does that make sense? But if we assume, okay, the goal is to not feel behind financially, then this would be a solid next step. And then track your expenses for a month. Use an app or track manually. Yes, would say the same. Categorize your expenses. Break down your expenses into major categories like fixed expenses, variable expenses, and debt payments. Love that also. I do that as well. I divide my expenses into fixed costs so that I know what I absolutely have to pay as a minimum every month. And I also, use the other like big category variable costs. And then I usually build an average of like 3 months or 6 months of expenses, because then this gives you a realistic picture of how much you need for your variable costs. Now, it used debt payments as a third category. The way I would recommend that is to pay the minimum of debt payments for each of the loans into the fixed expenses. And then it's the same every month until the debt is paid off. And that is why I would put the minimum amount into the fixed expenses. Then 3, identify patterns. After a month of tracking, review where most of your money is going. You might discover areas you can adjust. Yes, I love that. And when I first started tracking my money, I actually found out that I was paying double for a phone contract. So I was paying for the new phone contract, and I was also still paying for the other one that I thought was canceled. And because I still got my bank statements on paper, and they had 3 positions on one piece of paper. I don't know. I missed it. I just missed it. So identifying patterns, very helpful. And number 4, create a budget. Once you know your spending habits, create a monthly budget. Set limits for each category based on your income and priorities. Use the 50-30-20 rule as a simple guideline. 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings and debt payments. Yeah, so that's good advice. It's solid. Now here particularly, you landed on a channel that is about building wealth without sacrificing luxury and without living frugal. And my approach to that is a little bit different. I think the 50-30-20 rule works for the majority of people. If I would have used the 50-30-20 rule, I would not be even close to the net worth I have today. So I guess that depends on how ambitious you are in building your wealth. Our goal is to not feel behind financially, and then creating a budget and using this method is good. It's good. All right. Now what would I ask next? So let's say Alex is a very hands-on person and he or she wants to track his or her expenses, like right now, before even continuing the conversation. And because I created Alex in my head, he or she is just going to use my net worth tracker, which is simply an Excel sheet that is already categorized into fixed cost and variable costs. And not just that, it is also more categories, so where you really see at a glance where you're spending your money. And it also calculates percentages and stuff. All right, so if you want to use it as well, there's a link down below. Let's say, okay, I have tracked my expenses with an Excel sheet. Turns out I'm spending about 30% of my income on rent and utilities. Let's just say, okay, 10% is for debt payments. Let's say Alex has a student loan and the rest was variable costs because Alex enjoys the good life, like going out to restaurants, shopping for clothes, going on vacation. What do I do now? Great job tracking your expenses. Thank you. Now that you have a clear picture, we can move on to the next steps based on the details you've shared. It sounds like you have a solid foundation and we can focus on some key areas to help you make progress financially. Assess your debt. Since you're spending 10% of your income on student loan payments, you want to look at interest rate. What's the interest rate on your loan? If it's high, it might make sense to focus on paying it down faster. Loan terms. How much do you owe and how long is your repayment period? Are there any opportunities to refinance for a better rate? Love that. So this is actually the order that I was mentioning in the beginning, where I would also ask the debt question. So here ChatGPT gives as the next step to dive deeper into the debt part and figure out the details. Love that. If your student loan interest rate is above 5 to 6%, it might be worth focusing extra money here. I totally agree. Refinance options. If you haven't looked into refinancing, this could lower your interest rate, especially if you have good credit. Yes, also good. Consider paying more than the minimum. Love that. That is also what I would absolutely recommend. Put as much towards your debt as possible. If possible, even adding 50 or 100 per month can help you save on interest and pay down the principal faster. Love, love, love. Okay, number 2, reevaluate your variable spending once. You mentioned that a portion of your expenses goes to things like dining out, shopping, and vacations. These are important to enjoy life. Yes, they are, but there's usually room to cut back if you're feeling like you're behind financially. Totally true. Next steps, set limits. Oh, I love that. It's about finding a balance. Maybe aim to reduce discretionary spending by 10 to 20%. Okay. For example, if you're currently spending $500 a month on dining out, reducing that by 50 to 100 could free up money for savings or debt payments. Yes, very good. All right, now that is generous. Okay, if Alex came to me and would say, I earn $4,800 a month and I have debt and zero in savings, I would be more, I would propose to save more than 10 or 20% of this spending. Prioritize vacations. If you love going on vacations, consider setting aside a specific amount each month for this goal, so you don't feel like it's taking away from other important areas. I love that. And that is exactly what I would propose as well. And if you followed me for a while, this is one of my favorite accounts. I would tell Alex to set up a fun account. So a fun account that is only for the things that he or she enjoys. And then he can put money there, or she, from his or her salary, and then, pay for the vacations and for the restaurants and for the clothes and stuff from there. Because then it's not this whole mess of money, in the bank account, and then you have to pay everything from there. But you categorize it into very clear accounts and what is paid from where. Because then the main checking account can be for fixed costs and the really necessary variable costs like groceries and insurances and transportation, and also the debt payment, and the other one can be for the wants. Then set up build an emergency fund. Since you're already working on getting organized, building up your emergency fund should be the next priority. Yes, that is good. If you haven't already saved 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a high yield savings account, aim for that next. Love that. Okay, so ChatGPT also proposes to put $200 to $300 a month into that high yield savings account for the emergency fund until it's filled up. I know that 3 to 6 months is the average recommendation for an emergency fund. I say 3 months is too little. I would go for 6 months anytime, and you can even consider going for 12 months depending on your situation. So if you work in a job where it's going to be harder for you to find a new one, if you get laid off for whatever reason, then with 12 months you're on the definitely safer side, and also more on the financial peace of mind side, because finding a new job, either in a situation where maybe you are sick, or I don't know, or some things come up, or in your family some things come up, then 3 months is tight to have covered. Okay, what's now not super clear for me is if ChatGPT wants me to pay off the debt and build up the emergency fund at the same time. It does seem a bit like it, and that's also what I would recommend. Number 4, maximize retirement savings. If your job offers a 401k match, make sure you're contributing enough to get the full match. Would agree, because that full match is free money that goes into your retirement account. Next steps for retirement. Take advantage of the match, yes, and start a Roth IRA. If you have room in your budget after your 401k, a Roth IRA could be an excellent way to build wealth for the long term. Yes, I agree. If the conditions match Alex's situation. Because it might be that Alex is, I don't know, for example, very ambitious, or in a job where his or her income is going to explode within the next 3 years. And then it's important to check, if the Roth IRA is still a match for a certain income. 5, look for areas to cut back. Now that you have an overview, consider areas where you could reduce spending and reallocate funds toward goals. Subscriptions, yes. Like my subscription to that phone contract. Do you have any subscriptions you don't use much? Automate savings. In addition to your emergency fund and retirement accounts, consider putting money into a separate savings account for specific goals, like buying a house, vacation, etc. Yes, I absolutely agree with automating. It's what makes the financial journey fun, because you set it up once and then it keeps working for you. I have both automated. So I have automated the money that goes onto my wealth accounts, like I call them. So one is a high yield savings account for my emergency fund, and the other one are my investment accounts. And I also have an automated transfer to my fund account. Okay, based on everything above, create a monthly budget that aligns with your priorities. Essentials, emergency fund savings and retirement, discretionary spending. Summary of actions. Oh, love that. Here's basically a step-by-step process summarized. Number 1, focus on paying off debt, especially if it's high interest. Number 2, cut back on discretionary spending and set realistic limits. Okay, one thing that I just thought about, okay, at the moment, obviously 100% of Alex's income is occupied or is gone. So in order to focus on paying off the debt, we would need to free up some money before that. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, one way to do that could be to simply increase the payment towards the debt. So $480 goes towards debt each month. So what we could do to focus on the paying off the debt after Alex has figured out all the details about that debt is to say, okay, let me increase it to 600 and then I just live off the rest. So this would be a plan that is in concordance to this, in this step thingy. And then Alex will automatically, spend less on the variable things because there's less money left now in the checking account. And same goes for the emergency fund. So Alex could just say, okay, I will increase my debt payment to 600 a month or even more than that, and will also put, let's say, 200 per month towards the emergency fund. Okay, then number 4 is max out retirement contributions, and number 5 is reevaluate unnecessary subscriptions. Okay, now the other problem I see with this order is when Alex starts to max out his or her retirement contributions, the after-tax income will slightly change. So what I now think about is if it wouldn't make more sense to start with this one, so, max out the contributions and then see, okay, is it still $4,800 or is it less? And then start from there. Because that way Alex has already taken care of retirement, which is good. And because he or she has only the student loan and not any other type of debt, I would probably even, just throw into the room to think about this. Okay, should we start with maxing out your 401k? Because then you can calculate better with what is actually left with your income. Because hypothetical number, let's say with the 401k match, it's not $4,800 per month anymore, but it's $4,600 per month after tax. And then it might not be as easy anymore, to put $600 towards that and 200 towards the emergency fund. Okay, not really. It should, because we already established that we pay only 30% for the rent and utilities. But still, so that you see my thinking process, all right? So I do assume that Alex could cut back significantly in order to get ahead financially, even if it's just for a short amount of time. And then depending on the individual situation, this order would slightly change if I would do the coaching. All right, I could go on and ask further, but I think what I can already tell you now, that this is good advice. I mean, if Alex would do everything that ChatGPT said in this example that we just went through, then he or she would definitely not have a reason anymore to feel behind financially. Because then Alex would have taken care of the very most important steps in the beginning of their financial journey. And then as Alex progresses, he or she could still, go deeper into the chat and say, okay, now, I don't know, now my student loan is paid off. What do I do next? Or I thought about my goals. I want to reach 1 million by the end of 50 or something like that. And then with goals specific like that, I would say ChatGPT can really be of help. All right, now as conclusion for this little experiment, I have to say ChatGPT does give solid advice when it comes to money management 101. Now, first of all, when you do this, please do not share your name. Also, do not share any account details. And you can share numbers. I think it's helpful for ChatGPT to, also do calculations, but do not attach more information to those numbers than you need to. So for example, like we did now for Alex, okay, my after-tax salary is $4,800. I'm in student debt with, $75,000. This is my monthly contributions. I think those are numbers that you can share because it helps with the calculating, stuff. But maybe not other details like account numbers we already talked about, but also names of the bank or names of where you have the debt, stuff like that. I would also not use ChatGPT for investment advice. We haven't covered that. One more way you can also use ChatGPT for the money management part is for a reading list. So you could ask, hey, what books could I read in my situation right now? What you could also do, when you use ChatGPT continuously on your financial journey, is ask questions like, okay, what should I have asked you that would help me build more wealth? In fact, let's try that. What else should I have asked you about now that would help me with my money management? You've covered a lot of important areas already, but here are a few additional things you could think about that might help refine your approach to managing money. And that can be a powerful strategy to think of things that you haven't thought about before. Do you know what I mean? So here what came up is credit score and report. Not so relevant in Europe, but I know it is in the US. Investment strategies, absolutely. Tax strategies, yes. I think with taxes it depends, because taxes can be very individual. Financial goals and planning, yes. We already touched on that. Insurance needs, interesting. Yes, I think that is something that is often, underestimated in the personal finance space. Extra income, we already touched on that as well. Shortly in the beginning, building wealth over time, lifestyle inflation. Okay, so this would be one other tip, how I sometimes use ChatGPT. Okay, one more note, because I have noticed this now in the past few weeks where I've used ChatGPT. Sometimes the information is not accurate. So I remember this one time where I said, and I think it was about quotes, and I asked like, hey, can you give me 10 quotes about that topic? And then I got a list of 10 quotes where also the book from the quote was cited. But then I read this one sentence or this one quote and I knew it. And I was like, hey, you wrote it from this person, but isn't it from this person? And then the answer was, yes, you're absolutely right. This quote is actually from this book. And then I thought, okay, you should really, take it with a grain of salt, what information you get via ChatGPT. And it certainly doesn't hurt to double check. So that was my little experiment on Money Management 101. Let me know how you like that format, because for me it was actually fun. Either way, hope you learned something. If you're still here, thank you for watching this far, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.